Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're dialing in from, everyone. I'm seeing a bunch of people already hop in, which is awesome. Welcome to everyone. While we are getting everyone filtering in, I'm going to just pop up a poll real quick so that we can get a sense of where everyone's coming from and who has been to CPTC before and who this is new for. I think I made that poll live. Let's see. Polls and quizzes. Nope, I didn't launch it. Would help if I know how to actually webinar.
I have the Grace Ganthem background on this account. Okay, hold on.
Okay. Now you should actually see a poll there. So we're just going to give everyone a couple moments there. Let's see. I see some questions in chat, or not questions in chat, but someone is saying, Omar, you're saying you're new. Awesome. Welcome and happy to have you here. And Evan, it looks like your hand is raised. If you want to just put a question into the Q&A or the webinar chat, we can look at it there. But overwhelmingly right now, looking at the poll results, 2/3 of you, not even 2/3, 3/4 of you, it's your first time. So awesome. I love to see a lot of new competitors. And I would say we've all been a first competitor here. But not me, but Stuart, you were not Stuart, you were yeah, you were a competitor actually a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. I think I competed in CPTC 2 or CPTC 3.
Yeah. Raul, I don't think you were a competitor, right?
I was not, no.
And Greg, I think you weren't either, but
Correct. I was not either.
okay. Meredith, you were for a couple years.
Yeah, I was in CPTC 3. I'm hiding behind the screen.
Okay. So we are a couple minutes in. I see a lot of people answering the poll, which is awesome. We'll post those results in a moment. It looks like the Central and SoCal right now are the highest represented regions, but we have teams and participants from every single regional here, which is fabulous to see. I especially want to thank the people over in EMEA, Dubai, and Jordan, staying up really late at 2 and 1 a.m. Apologize for the time. We tried to do the best we could with what we had available. But I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we have a couple just quick slides we want to go through from talking points and want to show you how the environment access is going to work. And then we're going to open the floor for any Q&A that we might get from the crowd. Our goal here is to just prepare you all to be successful to compete. So without further ado, let's fire away. First, I want to talk a little bit about competition schedule. This is going to be something that's going to be similar for every region, but there are going to be potentially some minor differences just based on your individual regional host. All of the things are going to be consistent though. So every regional is going to have the same amount of time in the environment, the same amount of time to produce your report and all of that. So you don't have to worry about there being any differences depending on what region you're in. It's all designed to be fair. You are all going to get a packet from your regional host. That's going to be sent out via email before the event. Those of you like in Central have already gotten that because the event is going to be happening next weekend. The later regionals, your host will be sending that closer to when your regional happens, usually a week or two out. So that's going to give you the detailed schedule, going to tell you where to go, all of those details just to make it easy. On Saturday, you can assume you're going to have 8 hours of access to the environment. Your reports are going to be typically due around midnight, so you'll have about 5 or 6 hours after the event closes in order to do final reporting. And then on Sunday in the afternoon, you'll have your awards. So that's going to be the high-level overview of things for the schedule. Okay. Next, I want to talk a little bit about environment access. And we're actually going to have Raul do a quick demo of this so you can see what it looks like too. The high-level approach, though, is that environment access is going to be via RDP or remote desktop to a VDI environment that we host at RIT. And one of the things you want to do, especially for most of the regions where it is BYOD, where you bring your own laptop, you want to make sure you're familiar with using a remote desktop client and have one loaded on your machine so you're ready to compete. Most of the time, this is something that's going to be built into your machine if you're running Windows, but if you're using Linux or a Mac, you're probably going to have to download a client and have that ready to go. So just be familiar with that so it's not a surprise. And you're going to be doing all the work in this VDI environment during the competition hours. You can't access the customer environment at all outside of it. It's all contained within that VDI environment. So you RDP into a system. From there, you can pivot into a Linux machine that we have for running command line tools. There's also going to be a scanner, a Greenbone scanner that's going to be available as well. And then if you need to take artifacts back, like screenshots or other evidence for your report, we're going to give you a Microsoft OneDrive account. Anything you need to take back for reporting purposes, you got to put in there. So Raul, I'll stop sharing and I'll hand it over to you to do a quick demo.
Very good. Give me just a second. I know how computers work, I promise. For some reason, the share button is missing. Okay, so everyone should see my lovely wallpaper.
I am seeing
So
that here, Raul, so we're good.
okay, perfect. And so this is on a Windows box, but if you all need help with other OSs, by all means, feel free to let us know. Have an Apple computer as well if we prefer to go that route. Linux, that one is a little bit trickier because there's multiple RDP clients in Linux. So it's really dependent on what your preference is, but nonetheless, it should be very similar. So on Windows, you can open up remote desktop. You're going to be prompted for the computer name. In this case, I'm going to be, and all this information you should find in the scoring portal. So there will be a section that contains all the VDI boxes that you will have access to. It will give you the public IP. In this case, for the demo purpose, the IP that we're looking at ends in 249.109. And the port that you will be using is 41122. There are 6 different ports. We have provided those to the regional hosts to make sure that outbound is enabled for those ports. These ports will not change. They will stay the same across regionals, finals. The only thing that changes is obviously the environment across regionals and finals, and the passwords get rotated every time we do a build. So don't try to use these going forward. So you will be provided an administrator password. So we'll go ahead and actually I'm gonna clear this. I'm gonna use a different box so that it prompts me for credentials, because sometimes it gets a little funky depending on how you have your environment set up. So I'm just gonna clear that administrator. I'm gonna hit connect. It's gonna say, hey, would you like to log in with administrator? I'm going to go ahead and put in the password. The password is going to be similar syntax across the line, across your entire team. So be sure to keep an eye on that. Once you hit OK, You're going to be prompted, hey, the certificate's not valid. That's okay. Continue going on. And then you're going to see a screen like this, and hopefully y'all are seeing the RIT cyber range in the background.
Yep.
Now, something that Tom mentioned was you will also be receiving a green bone system. I don't have that up for this test, but you will also be receiving a Kali box. So we will be provisioning 6 different Kali boxes. They have SSH and RDP enabled. So you should, in the scoring portal, you will also get the credentials for your Kali boxes. Again, for the test, I don't have those deployed. But we were nice enough to just create icons for you all. So as soon as you get access, and if you want to RDP to the Kali box immediately, you can just double click one of these, hit connect. This is not going to work because the system's not up, but you'll again be prompted for credentials as soon as the system comes up. So that's it.
And
Any
one thing I
questions?
want to call out is make sure you know what team member is going to be on each VDI instance, because you'll kick someone off if you try to connect to one that's already in use. So just if you have 6 team members, know who's on box 1, box 2, so on, and that'll avoid some issues that we have seen in the past.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. I think that covers that. Thank you very much, Raul. And I'm going to go back. I'm going to end the poll. We'll just share results out. Awesome. A bunch of new timers and fabulous to see you all. And then I'm going to reshare the PowerPoint real quick and we'll keep going. So one of the things you see for CPTC is that we do things in character. So what that means, you're not competing when you're here for the competition. You're actually doing a pen test for a client. And when you interact with the client, you have to treat it like you're having a professional engagement. Meredith, you want to talk a little bit more about how that works? No?
So one of the most critical parts of CPTC is making sure that you are actively engaging with your clients. So when you are on site at your regional event, that means at times your clients may be walking into your room, into your office for the day at their wonderful, wonderful offices somewhere shoreside, somewhere in the world. And we hope that you will treat them with kindness and care in the same way that you put those responses into your VSA and character. You will be staying in character for all of those interactions with your clients as they wander into the rooms, as they come in with very specific asks. And one of the most important things to note is you cannot step out of character during the competition hours. If a CPTC volunteer who is playing a character chooses to step out of character, they will oftentimes physically take a step and say, we are stepping out of character to have this teachable moment, educational opportunity. Otherwise, when in doubt, for the competition hours and during the kickoff, there is a point where we go in character and we don't turn that off until the competition is done. I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, thank you. So it's a little, especially if you're new to CPTC, that's a little bit different, but something just to keep in mind and how we do things so that you can get in the mindset of, hey, you're doing a pen test for a real customer. So Raul or Stuart or Greg, anything before we go into common questions that you'd like to touch on for any of that?
Yeah, I just want to kind of back off of what Meredith was saying there. You know, one of the things that I think is not always obvious when you first are going into cybersecurity is sort of the driving forces behind why companies choose to do security in the first place. You know, obviously, we all want to protect our customers' data as best as possible. But typically, you know, they're getting a pen test or they're hiring additional security staff for a reason, right? And so whether you're on the in-house blue team security side or you're doing, you know, security consulting, right? Identifying those drivers and catering your deliverables and, you know, basically your entire employment strategy or consulting strategy towards meeting the needs of those drivers is critically important. And that's one of the sort of educational opportunities that we try and instill year over year, right? Like, obviously, everyone agrees we should all do security and we should do it well. However, that is typically not why companies are hiring you to come and do a pen test for them. So keep that in mind as you're competing this year.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart.
I'll add some thoughts there as well, Tom. So hi, everybody. My name's Greg. I work predominantly on scoring for the competition. And I think very much in line with everything else that's been said, I just want to add that, the reason why we have this feature of the competition is because we want all of you to get into this amazing career and field that we are so passionate about and enjoy so much. So we have this simulated role play component to the competition to give you a really unique opportunity to actually act out what it's like to work in the profession that presumably you're aspiring towards because you're a part of this competition. So it's a very significant part of the competition, not just from the experience and the learning outcomes that you get. It also factors into how we score things, and it can make a big difference for your team. How well you engage with the client on a customer service level. So it's really worthwhile to think through what scenarios a client is likely to engage you with, and to have kind of a plan for your team on how you want to handle client communications and client interactions face to face. It's really important to do your best in this competition and to get the most out of it, and to build all the connections and relationships that you're going to get from being a participant here. It's really important to, even though you're in many cases a classroom for the competition and you're part of a school team here, really think of your team as a consulting company, and try to exist in the competition as much as you possibly can with a mindset of this is my job, this is my work environment. And if you do that and you think through, as particularly ahead of time, what are the kinds of questions a client's likely to have of me during an engagement? What are the best practices in engaging with the client? I mean, everyone's heard the adage, the customer's always right, right? So think about, how you plan on interacting with your client. We're absolutely going to set up the competition so that you're going to have client interactions. So be prepared to, ace those and put your best foot forward, and it's going to be a great experience. So that's all I got, Tom. Thanks.
Thanks, Greg. Anything for you? Okay. Okay, let's go on with questions. We've assembled a couple of the things that we get through the ticketing system and questions that we see in Discord, just so that everyone's on the same page. One of the big ones is GitHub access.
So for the teams who will be participating in that first weekend regional that is happening next Saturday, you have until really this Thursday to get your GitHub requests in, and this Friday to make any changes to those requests. For all others, please review the rules on the timeline. It's at least a week out for all changes and 2 weeks out to make those or put those requests in. Those tools that you put into those GitHub repos should be documented, not obfuscated in any way, so that as we're going through and reviewing both before and during the competition, we know what your tools are doing. We can validate that with our Security Operations Center that APT has.
And then just a hint, if you are looking for ideas of what other teams are doing, go there. This is public for a reason, and we want to encourage some collaboration. So if you see something, you can ask on Discord, like, hey, what does this do? And hopefully someone who wrote that will help. But the idea here is that we want everyone to not have to spend time typing commands and things like that, be able to be more effective, but also contribute to a community as well. I know you're competing. I hate the whole fact that, we're trying to, eliminate some of the competition part of that, but in the real world, you're going to have to work with people who are not always going to be your, buddy, I guess, so to speak, for that. So that's kind of one of the things that exists, and it's something that we try to do to make it easier for everyone. Now, Raul, I probably will turn it over to you for Allowed Tools, since I know you deal with these questions a lot.
Yeah, so for tools, we cannot use commercial tools. So I think there was a question in Discord actually here recently, asking about things like Burp Suite. Burp Suite is allowed, just because it's a tool that we have an exception for, right? We're allowing that. It's a popular tool used by industry. It's an exception. There are a lot of other tools that have things like, free licensing, or not free, but somewhat free licensing, something like Nessus. Nessus should not be used. That's why we're giving you Greenbone. For some folks, and there's a lot of reasons behind that, but mostly it's to just keep the playing field as even as possible, right? We want to try to give everyone the same tools across the board. So that's why we do that. If there's a specific tool that you would maybe like to see in the future, by all means, email us at feedback@cp.tc and we'll take that into account. Greenbone was one of those, right? Students were giving us feedback about like, hey, look, like we spend 2-3 hours deploying Greenbone because it's so large. It just takes a long time sometimes to get set up. We're like, okay, we hear you, we got you. We'll figure something out. And that's why we now include Greenbone in the environment. Burp Suite Pro is not allowed. Only the free edition that comes built into Kali. That is one of the primary reasons we enabled RDP on the Kali boxes so that you all would have to have the ability to leverage that tool without having to install it or setting anything up.
And then I have a couple examples here of some questions that we get about different tools and items. So like if you have a private GitHub repo that's just for your university or tied to a specific team member, that's something that we don't allow. You'll want to use the provided repos that we have. We do look for GitHub access and other Git environments, so we want to make sure you're not doing that. Private Discord server. We don't want you to spin up a new Discord server to communicate within the environment. We've seen teams do this in the past. If you want to use the built-in tools in the Microsoft environment, you're welcome to use Teams or other things that are available in there. You can also use online Microsoft documents as well to collaborate. Nessus Essentials. This is one that comes up a lot, and this is a licensing concern, so we don't allow that one during the event. And also like cloud-based note-taking tools like Obsidian or similar. Those are also things that we don't allow because you're essentially putting customer information in an environment where the customer doesn't have control over their data. So they've provided you a place to do it. That is okay. We've had questions about local ghostwriter instances, and that's one that's actually okay as long as you are storing that data locally in the VDI environment and using OneDrive to transfer that into your team systems later. So that one we've reviewed and determined it's okay because it can be used essentially offline and store the data within the VDI environment. If you have similar tools, obviously we can't cover everything in that, but this is just kind of a sense of the guidelines. The CPTC rules are going to be the main point of reference. Stuart, Meredith, Greg, Raul, anything else that you've seen that we don't have on here before we go to the group questions from everyone online?
I'll just add from the scoring side, we see every year that teams violate these guidelines. So make a close note of the material in these slides and hold yourself, within these guardrails, and don't, all these teams put in so much work to compete here. Don't undermine your team's chance for success by trying to, get around, these guidelines. They're there for a reason. Just every year we see it. Please let this be the first year we don't see it again.
Yeah, and when in doubt, ask your client. That'd be my advice. If you are going to use a website or a third-party tool and you're going to transfer any kind of information, even something like an Nmap result, right? That's confidential client information. If it's not publicly accessible, if you can't find it with Google, and even actually then sometimes I guess, it's confidential information. So yeah, when in doubt, reach out. And then the other one is don't upload your client's keys into sites such as QuipQuip or similar. We've seen kind of a concerning trend with that over the last couple of years. I assume that is because of like CTF challenges or something like that. But yeah, don't do that. Your client will get angry at you. So yeah, thanks.
I think some other things that we've seen are like, think about what an attack is doing before you run it. So what was it? A couple years ago, we had a bunch of teams run Eternal Blue on our domain controller during the middle of the event, and that caused an outage within the company, and the customer was displeased about that happening. So if the tool has a potential to cause a business interruption or be destructive, that's probably something you want to ask the customer about before you go ahead and do that. I think another thing we saw was like last year there were QR codes that were involved, and a lot of people were trying to scan those with like a website, and you were uploading a private QR code to a cloud service. That's also something that could be a data breach. So keep those things in mind. There's local ways to integrate with stuff, and customer does take data sensitivity and security seriously. I think Greg and Stuart, those are the ones that we have seen a lot of over the past several years. Are there any other ones that you can think of that I'm missing?
Zero login. We saw zero login, I think last year or the year before. That's a really good one, right? So to sort of just piggyback on what Tom was saying there, you know, always know what your tools are doing, right? And that extends to your exploits, right? If your exploit is going to change credentials in your customer's environment, or you know, change something, right? And maybe that something that it changes could cause a massive loss of availability the next day for your client. You know, that's not going to reflect well on you, right? And we will respond accordingly. Your client will respond accordingly. So yeah.
Yeah, we as clients don't like that when things go sideways, obviously, as any customer would. But at the end of the day, our goal is to help you all learn, and we'd rather have something go sideways in CPTC and you learn from it, where you don't get in a situation where you jeopardize your employer or your career. So it's hard sometimes to learn and experience that, but from our perspective, those lessons are something that'll help you in the future. And that is our goal here. So with that said, let's turn it over to the questions that we have both in the Q&A and chat. So let us rapid fire and make sure if you have questions that you haven't posted, just go ahead and throw them in the Q&A. And we want to make sure we have time to answer any questions that you have so that we are all on the same page and you're ready to compete. So Omar has a question first, like what we're going to have during the 2 days from the technical side, and what technical preparations do you need to make on our side to be ready. I think from my perspective, first, the Saturday is the day you're going to be doing testing. So you're going to be dropped into a customer environment and expected to perform a pen test. So review the things that were in the VSA, the vendor security assessment. Some of those contribute to some of the things the customer is interested in. There's some clues about the environment that'll give you an idea of what to expect. But you basically are going to have that whole day from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m.-ish to do your pen test, and then until midnight to submit a report. And be prepared to drop into an unknown environment, perform a security assessment, develop a pen test report, find vulnerabilities. That's going to be how you need to be successful. I'll turn it over to the folks who know more than me. Meredith, do you have anything to add there?
The only other thing that I would add is make sure that you are reading through those questions from your client, or the answers to the questions from your client that all of you posed. We broke them out, broke them down.
Oh yeah, we did that this year.
Yeah.
The very long document of VSA question responses. There's a lot of good information in there to prepare for it. So I can't believe I forgot about that because it was a pain to put together, but that's something new we did this year. So that's something for everyone. Raul, Greg, Stuart.
Hopefully the first couple of slides in the deck also kind of spoke to that question, but if there's any, follow-ups or anything we can further clarify, please feel free to come off mute or throw a follow-up in the chat.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so we have a question from Jamil, asking about if we're from Jordan and we get qualified and need help getting a visa. It's one of the reasons we have the international region early on is to help get time to go through that whole visa process. So definitely something we'll help get you a letter and all of that. So there we go. There's a question about recording. You'll be able to review. Yes, we're going to take the recording, post it up on YouTube probably tomorrow or Friday so that everyone can see that. This isn't designed to be some secretive webinar. You get the live benefit of asking us questions and getting a response versus the people who watch it later don't get to interact live the same way. Next question. Will we be required to do the presentation in globals, or will you do it in regionals also? Regionals doesn't have a formal presentation like finals does on the Sunday. Mainly from a timing perspective, it's difficult to do. There is a chance that there might be some speaking or presenting component. You'll have to find out what your customer likes or wants, and that might be something you get an email about during the event. But it might be something where maybe one person on your team or a pair of people need to talk about a topic. We've done that in the past, or potentially have just walked into your room and asked, in a couple minutes, we want a summary of something that's going on. So there's typically some sort of professional interaction scenario with a customer, but the formal 10-minute presentation that you see posted on YouTube, you're not going to end up doing something like that at the regional event. If you advance to finals, pretty good chance you'll have to do that. Okay, next question. To avoid making mistakes in the competition, how much of this will be rehashed at the actual competition? So this is intended to be more detailed, more prescriptive. We want to go through things that we've seen before that are problems. Leading up to the event, we have about 15 minutes where we're going to talk about things. We're really going to be focused on just high-level things. This is intended to be a little bit more detailed and prepare for the actual event. So.
And on top of that, as Tom mentioned back at the start, your regional hosts will be giving you a team packet with a breakdown with a lot of these details. On top of that, you have the wonderful rules document that we review every single year. So a lot of the things that we were talking about that were in relation to rule violations, you'll find those right in the rules, especially for things like GitHub. You'll also find some helpful examples. So make sure you review that as well ahead of time, since you will be signing an attestation that you read the rules and you'll understand them once you get on site to your wonderful regional APT location.
Yeah, and the regional team packet is going to be a great source of information for that. But yeah, we're not going to be rehashing all of this right before the event. We don't have time. Okay, next question. Burp Suite Professional, we answered that. That's not going to be provided, just the one built into Kali. Is public information that anyone can access, like the source code of a publicly accessible page, considered proprietary client information? If it's something that is just on the internet, no, because that is not sensitive information. So if for some example, like I'm going to go back to the famous case of what education state was, or state's education site that was, where you could view the source code and see the PII of every educator. Like this was like 4 years ago or something like that. There's some case in the United States where some lawmaker was trying to say that someone who accessed the source code of a page was committing a data breach or something along the lines of that. Like, no, that's public information if it's on the internet. That said, think about how things in the environment are built out, what is accessible, what isn't. You can pretty much assume anything that only exists within the VDI environment is proprietary to the customer because it's their internal network. So you'll want to keep that in mind. Raul, Stuart, Greg, Meredith, anything I'm missing on that?
I'm just going to borrow from a phrase you'll hear Stu and others often say, which is, when in doubt, ask your client. That's the safe play. Their client's never, or at least in the context of this competition, is never going to be frustrated with you double checking to make sure that information you're handling is being handled according to their standards.
Well said. Next, policy. I'm sorry?
Wait, before we hop into the next question, just a request from all of us. Please make sure you are using the Q&A feature. Since there's a lot going on in chat, we can't accurately get to the questions. So please making sure you are using the Q&A button, asking the questions there. Okay, now you can go.
Okay, policy for LLM usage during the competition. I know we have ChatGPT as an allowed tool, but Raul, Stuart, Greg, I'll turn those over to you so that you can have a better answer than me.
So we typically avoid doing that. Because again, what we're doing is we're feeding the LLM potentially proprietary information. So don't do that. If you're using it for something like report writing, so be it. Yes, you can do that. But don't be the perfect example. We saw this last year. Someone took an Nmap scan, uploaded it to ChatGPT and said, "Hey, what vulnerabilities should I be looking for based on this Nmap scan?" Right? Don't be doing that. Again, that's client information. Think about what you're uploading. And again, if you think like, "Oh, you know what? Maybe I don't know if I should be doing this." Ask the client. Be like, "Hey, we'd like to request leveraging ChatGPT to process Nmap information. Is that okay?" And we'll answer. I will be honest, we're not always the fastest to answer questions. We do our best. We're all volunteers just trying to get through tickets. There are more of you all than there are of us. So there might be a little bit of a delay. Um, so please be patient with us as we get through those tickets and we try to get those responses to you because sometimes there's people who don't know the answers, right? Maybe someone from the apps team gets a question about something that now they have to go and reach out to a director and make sure that this is okay with like within the rules, right? Within the guidelines. So be patient with us as we're going through these tickets and responding to these questions during the competition because again, there are a lot more competitors than are folks on the volunteer team responding to these tickets. So that's all. That's all I got.
Yeah, just kind of piggybacking on that. So we made an exception for ChatGPT, right? That's one of the things that you can sign up for and use as long as you're not like getting pro or putting a credit card into it or whatever. When you're signing up for it, please use the email account that we provide to you for the competition. If you delete anything out of the chat history on ChatGPT, we will know, and that will not be good. We as the client are allowing you to access our information system, the email address that you are using to connect to a third-party service. So please ensure that you're not deleting client information, but also not uploading like if you have any doubt whatsoever, again, ask out, but also just don't do it, right? Like even the names of employees, the names of vulns, right, in conjunction with the name of the client, like that's proprietary information. So yes, you can use it to build templates and formatting, and you can strip out any identifying information. But you know, as we've kind of seen the shift in the landscape as to what is, you know, confidential information and what isn't in the last 2 years, that, you know, trickles down to the competition. So again, please don't really it's not enough to change the name of the client when you're putting it into ChatGPT, right? That's not like this one neat trick that makes it okay. So yeah, please think very carefully before you upload anything into an LLM.
Thanks, Stuart.
I'll just add, it's a little outside the scope of the question because the question said during the competition, but Stu kind of touched on it there with templates and stuff. Like, I would leverage LLMs to the maximum extent before the competition in your phase that you're in right now, trying to finalize your readiness as competitors. There's a lot you can use LLMs for to help envision the scenarios that you're likely to be encountering and to get templates drawn out and decision trees and game plans and stuff. Something to think about if you haven't already been thinking in that direction.
A good call out. Okay, let's move on to the next question from William. If we keep our Obsidian Vault in a local file share within the VDI, would that be allowed? I will say I'm not super familiar with Obsidian and how that works. So is anyone else on the call familiar with that?
Yeah, so you can do that. But here's what I'll tell you. We monitor your network traffic. We see that go outbound because we know it will. We will come to you and the client will be upset. My advice to competitors is leverage OneNote. We have Microsoft licensing for the entire suite. You're able to log in, you're able to use OneNote, very similar to Obsidian. I don't think it allows you to use markup like Obsidian does, but all that information will be automatically synced to the cloud. So if you happen to forget a screenshot, but you actually put it in OneNote, guess what? At the end of the competition, you're going to have that screenshot because you have access to your OneNote at the end of the competition. So I would I would advise not to use a local system. I would advise to use OneNote or OneDrive, but that is up to you all.
Yeah, and I would say when evaluating any tool, the things we're looking for, is it something you can freely use without a paid subscription, a login, or concerns about using it professionally? Is it something that uploads data to the cloud outside of the control of the customer? And is it something available to all competitors? Those are really the kind of things that we look at when we're deciding if something is okay or not. Okay. Jaina asked, could you please share any updates regarding this year's funding for finals? So right now, I don't know all of those details because that is something that's going to be handled through our IT. But from what I understand, it'll be similar to what we've done in the past, where there is some degree of sponsorship that is available on a as needed basis for teams to help them get to finals. We're planning still on doing things like covering hotels, I believe, and also meals and things like that. There won't be any costs for you to like attend the competition. Travel is kind of the one iffy area where sponsorship dollars and things like that are kind of at the control of our IT right now. So I don't have a great answer for that other than we're going to do what we can to try to support teams to be able to get there when the ones that qualify. Okay. So Nathan, in the VDA, I'm assuming VSA answers, our team saw that compliance was not in the scope of the engagement, but I just wanted to make absolutely sure. Is there expected to be zero mention of compliance in our report? I'm going to give that to Stuart since you are the one who loves talking about compliance.
Oh, geez. Yeah, so, we pre-select educational themes every year when we're planning the competition, right? It's based off of industry trends that we see, things, that we see competitors struggling with in previous years, or areas that we feel the need to emphasize. And we build all of the technical components as well as the injects, etc., around these technical themes, right? And so we identified the fact that maybe in previous years, right, we have chosen companies, etc., that are have a huge regulatory component to it, right? But we realized that, hey, maybe we're leaning a little too heavily into this, in the real world, like unless your client is explicitly scoping a compliance assessment, right? Like then they're not going to want to see in their pen test report that they might have to potentially provide to third parties the pen tester who's not a compliance CPA saying, hey, I think that this might violate whatever compliance framework, right? Like I think that would be a very, very bad day for the company had it not been scoped. So to your question, if compliance is not explicitly in scope here, then you should not be saying, hey, this finding violates this compliance framework or anything like that, because your client isn't asking for that, and that can be a huge can of a huge can of worms for them. So yeah.
Hey, thanks, Stuart.
I'll just add one idea on the back of that, Tom, which is to say that I think this feeds into a larger theme, which is a really important part of this, the learning outcomes of this competition, which is speaking to your expertise and also knowing what the limits of your expertise are. So there are a lot of situations in the injects that you'll experience in the competition when you're writing your reports where it'll be to your significant advantage if you can maintain awareness of where the limits and frontiers of your expertise are, and you can in a professional way, acknowledge them, and still maintain good customer service. I don't, I apologize if that's a little bit too vague or high level, but this is just a huge minefield that all of us have to walk as professionals when we're hired for the knowledge and expertise we possess. It can be really tempting to try and project expertise into areas where you're not, either licensed for it or certified for it, or just you're a little out over your skis. And when you get caught out over your skis, it can cause big problems for you in your professional reputation or for your client. And so that's a huge dimension of this competition that it's a tough issue to kind of like learn your way through. But if you can devote some time ahead of time in your preparation for the competition to just maintaining discipline about speaking to the things that you have expertise on and not trying to project expertise into areas where it either isn't asked for or you don't have it.
Thanks, Greg. Omar, we have a quick question. Can we get the slides you showed during the presentation? Yeah, that's going to be the recording that we'll post up on YouTube, so you'll be able to see all that content. Next, Nathan, how will the SOC involvement affect the pen test? What are the expectations? I guess I'll give that to you, Meredith.
Yep. So, as this is a wonderful company who has I would say, quite substantial cybersecurity budget, they have at least one person working in their SOC at all times who is going to be monitoring any suspicious network activity that they see, as well as any other activity. If they see something suspicious, they are very on it. They like to know whether or not there's a pen test. I'm not sure if we've told them. Actually, I don't know if the client said anything so far yet to their SOC.
I
But-
forget what it said in the VSA. I
Yeah.
think that the VSA question did say that the SOC is aware of a pen test.
Yeah, so there is a SOC, and if they see activity, they might be reaching out to you.
Yeah, as a general rule, if there's something that maybe looks like an exploit that's going on that they detect, they might be concerned that it's an actual threat in the environment. So zero login being a good example. That could be something where you might get some questions from the customer, especially if it could impact production.
And they might block it.
That's possible too.
Also, I'll add in here from the scoring side of things that, interactions between the pen test team and the SOC are a rich area for realistic professional scenarios that you're going to encounter in this competition. So if you think ahead as a competitor, like what are the things that are likely to happen when a pen test is going on and the SOC is monitoring the activity or maybe has tangential awareness of what's going on? Do you think it's happened before in the world of pen testing that a SOC has said, "Hey, pen test team, I think you caused this issue," and the pen test team didn't actually do it and has to kind of show, some receipts for why they're not actually responsible for an incident that's going on concurrent with their pen test? I'd say that's a pretty easily foreseeable scenario. So if you think a little bit ahead as a competitor and game plan for how you want to handle those types of situations from a customer service standpoint, you can really help yourself both in the learning outcomes and the professional experience of this, but also on the scoring side. So just food for thought there.
And I would say for that we in the past have done scenarios where we've gone to every single team and said, hey, we saw this activity, regardless of if we saw that activity or not, just as a part of the competition to say, hey, how do you respond to that, and score you based on that. Other times it's something based on your specific performance, whether if something was done in the environment that we detect. You don't necessarily know why. We're not telling you why. That's part of the thing that you have to deal with when you're doing a pen test for a customer. So just because we're coming to you doesn't automatically mean that you did something that we detected. It could just be an exercise that we're doing in the context of you participating in a pen test for a customer.
And just to kind of add on to that, Tom, we're not coming to you and accusing you of doing something that you haven't done because we're lazy, right? And we've seen some teams do it. We don't want to figure out which ones have done it and which ones haven't. This is a very real world scenario that has happened probably multiple times to all of us. So, it's pretty easy, right? When your, operations team or, the environment goes down and there happens to be a pen test happening, right? The first question is going to be, hey, so what are the pen testers doing? So yeah, don't you know, every interaction, every inject, every challenge that we, you know, or aspect of the technical environment, every scoring element that we create is based off of something that we have encountered in our professions or that our peers have encountered in their professions. We're not making this up as we go here, you know? So, you know, keep that in mind. I know it can be frustrating sometimes, but rest assured, you know, there's always a predefined educational outcome for anything that you're seeing, touching, or being exposed to.
Yep, thanks everyone. Next question, Dira, asking, can we archive potential OSINT information on our host machine? The consideration behind this is exposing potential OSINT findings on the staging GitHub could put the organization at risk due to the public nature of information. So I have a couple thoughts on that. One being, you can't do staging on your local machine per the rules. There are two ways that you're allowed to get information into the environment, GitHub being one for electronic information. You're also allowed any printed material pulled per the rules. So if you had a list of usernames or something like that and don't want to put that on GitHub, you can print that out, walk into the room with it, use that all you want. From a perspective of putting that on GitHub or not, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
I think they should submit a ticket for this one.
Yeah, I think maybe we don't have a great answer on that, and submit a ticket to CPTC, and we can make a better assessment of that. Because quite frankly, no one has asked that before. Okay.
Can I add to that? I think
Sure.
in this instance, I think what I would do if a client came to me and said, hey, Raul, we need you to do a pen test, and I just do some OSINT on them because I want to maybe find out what services they might be running, right? DNS is a big help when it comes to that. I would probably say put that in your OneDrive.
But also, they won't have OneDrive until the start of the event, so it's not something they'll be able to put there ahead of time.
That's true. Yeah, put in a ticket and we'll talk about it as directors and see what the best path forward is.
Yeah, but without having an electronic content answer for that, printed is perfectly fine per the rules. So if you dump that out, walk into the room, you're not going to have any issue with that. Okay, Riley, as a captain of a first-time competing team, I'm feeling big information overload in preparing our team to compete. We understand. What advice do you have specifically for first-time teams who have never competed before? So you were a competitor at one point. Stuart was a competitor before, so I'm going to defer to you first and then Stuart.
Yeah, sounds good.
You were
So
a captain too.
I was a captain, yes, way back when. So my first advice would be to pore over the rules. That has a lot of really good information in it. And now that we've started adding some examples into there based on some confusion we've seen in the past, that breaks down a lot of what we talked about today, as well as a lot of the base expectations during the competition. And similarly, we do have previous years kickoff calls that we pre-recorded live on YouTube on the CPTC account. So you are welcome to go back, review those, see the 45 to 50-minute deep dive into what the competition day is going to look like, how we advise you break up your time, the different ways that we structure different parts of the competition. I would say watch those back with your team, take notes. A lot of what we do each year is very structured and very similar, but changing those educational goals and opportunities that Stuart mentioned. And I'll pass it over to Stuart.
Yeah, is your team consisting entirely of freshmen, or is there upperclassmen as well on your team? Because that will change my answer.
4 juniors, 2
Perfect.
freshmen.
Okay. So here's what I also was the captain of a team. I think one of the things, and this is actually primarily based off of my experience as a competitor and not as a volunteer. So one of the things that I thought that we did that was pretty successful when we competed was we really practiced the first hour of the competition quite heavily, so we knew exactly what was going to happen, right? you know, we had basically like the initial enumeration planned out, right? Who, you know, basically like we did a quick scan, got the assets, assigned particular assets out, had scans going so that every like 15 minutes we would get like another layer deep of information from each of the assets on the network. You know, we had sort of checkpoints throughout the competition. We had our report. I would recommend you go onto the CPTC GitHub and check out our report examples. There's reports from many previous years that have been redacted. I would look at those, determine what you think are the best reports and what you think are the weakest reports, take the best elements from those best reports, incorporate that into a new report template, and report as you go along, right? You know, you don't have that much time to report, right? You're gonna finish the technical portion of the competition. You're gonna go have food or go back to your hotel or whatever. And I think you have to turn it in by like midnight or something like that. That's much less time than you think, right? So reporting as you're going along is a huge talent. The other things that I think I would say is when your client comes to you, right, and says, hey, I think you did this thing that has annoyed me or pissed me off, or hey, like, we saw you take my entire Bitcoin wallet, right, and run off into the sunset with it. It's okay to not respond immediately and give them an explanation. It's okay to say, hey, that sounds very serious. You know, we take these things you know, extremely seriously. I need some time to circle around with my team so we can perform an internal investigation. Can we have 5 minutes to confer here and see what's going on? And then happy to answer as many questions as I can. That's a great response, right? So I would encourage you to keep that in mind. And, you know, don't be afraid to push back a little bit against your client. But yeah, really just having a good template for what you're doing, reporting as you're going along, having practice dealing with angry clients, and having a good way and defined expectations for documentation. Those 4 or 5 things will get you really far.
And one of the other things I'll throw in there along the lines of reporting, look at examples of reports, have a template ready to go and approach for building your report as you're walking in, so that you know how you're going to present findings to the customer and how that evidence is going to be collected. You need to have evidence for every finding for it to be counted for scoring. So plan on making sure you take screenshots, capture information so that it's there. You can prove to the customer that, hey, there's a vulnerability. Also, though, take a look at example reports, look at executive summaries. That's one of the areas that we see a lot of, especially new teams, struggle with, because you got to be able to kind of look through those things. And an executive summary, a lot of times, is something people overlook. And if that is not in the report, if it's not addressing risk to the organization, those sorts of things, we see some teams struggle with that. So practice your business speak and all of that, and you'll do well. Okay. Hopefully that was helpful, Riley, and good luck with your team, and we're looking forward to seeing you at a regional.
I like how he was, or they were like, they're feeling a little overwhelmed, and then we just info dump them for 10 minutes.
There's a recording though, fortunately, but you can tell we all very passionate about this. So next, Tom asks, good name by the way, what's the CPTC provided email? Are they provisioned at comp time? So yes, you're going to be provided a email account, which is usually a cptc.team, similar email address with your region name and team number. So it'll be like central1@cptc.team. And that'll be the email address that you use in the event. It's available in the scoring portal when the event starts, so it won't be available until the drop at the start of the event. But that email address is going to be there. There'll be a password for you to log in. You share that with all your team members so that they have access to the email as well as the Microsoft account. It's all in there. So that is what there is. You're not going to be using a personal email address.
I think that's worth, Tom, just double clicking on real quick. Every single year, we see competing teams start out the competition using personal emails to engage with the ticketing service. And that's it's not the end of the world. We'll quickly correct you if you do that, but that is a point docking sort of thing. So all the materials that you have in the run up to the competition make it really clear. You need to identify it yourself in the ticketing system through your issued email. The reason for that is to make sure that we have as much neutrality as possible in the evaluation of things. We only want to see a team number. We don't want to see a school name or a personal name. So just try to roll with that. It would be awesome if this year was the first year we didn't see a personal email or a school email show up in the ticketing system as the competition begins.
And some of that is just from a integrity perspective, but also we don't want to see your personal login details and things in logs. So we want to protect your accounts too. So that is good there. Next, we have a question from Alex. Please confirm that competitors' laptops may access the OneDrive during the report writing phase. In other words, you don't need to write the report in the VDI. Raul, Microsoft man.
Yeah, so competitors will be given access after the environment cutoff. Again, this is why we strongly recommend you leverage OneDrive, OneNote, whatever, because all the documentation will be there, especially during the reporting phase. Something to keep in mind, we are monitoring that. So don't try to get help from outside. Don't do things that you shouldn't be, because we do monitor M365 extensively. We know where you're making your requests. We know where things are coming from. So please be as honest as possible and don't try to take advantage of the situation. We want this to be as fair as possible across the board. Short answer, yes, you will have access to OneDrive as well as the rest of the Office suite immediately following the competition to perform your reporting.
And just to be abundantly clear on timelines, during the assessment phase, so roughly 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., you can only access things in the VDI, the OneDrive account. After that 6 p.m. part where the environment is shut down, your VDI environment is no longer accessible. You can't collect any artifacts unless they're in OneDrive. And from that point forward, you can access that on your machines and build your report off the evidence you collect. So, yes, VDI during the competition assessment phase, personal machines afterwards. And hopefully that distinction is good. Okay, next one. Nikhil asks, will there be a blue team defending the machines on the network? I don't know what the contract is with our SOC and our MSSP for that, but I don't know if there is any active defense provided or not. I think it's going to be one of the things you'll just have to see as you interact with the environment and what happens. So the customer may have that as an option. It may not.
But just in case there was defending was also used in the context of monitoring, there's definitely, there's a security operations center that's monitoring the environment. Hopefully that's abundantly clear, but just in case it wasn't in the question, like there's definitely a blue team monitoring what's going on.
Yep. Thanks, Greg.
We are watching.
Okay, next question is from Hamza. But if he removed the client-related data, it should be okay, right? I think I'm trying to remember the context on that. Do you remember, Meredith?
Yes, this was in relation to uploading information to ChatGPT.
Okay, so Stuart already answered that. So we're good there. Next, we have Omar. Can you explain more about the GitHub access part and what we need to do before the deadline 10th of October? So assuming that you are, so 14 plus 10 is 24. So you would be in the international region in EMEA. So that deadline would be to request a GitHub repo to be created on the CPTC Team Tools repo. And then that allows us to create the repo, assign your team members to it so they can commit code there. And then a week before the event, you will be able to still make changes up until that point. And that 10th of October is specific to your region. It's 2 weeks before the regional where you have to request the repo, 1 week before where you're forbidden to make changes. Okay, Omar. Through California State University, we have OpenAI account. We were told by OpenAI our chats or information is not used to train their model. We'll be able to use that account. Is that something available to all schools? No. So that's something that we don't allow in CPTC, regardless of if it's your university or not, specific and has these data controls. We don't know. The customer doesn't know that. Not every school can use it. You can't use that.
And just piggybacking on top of that, like, do you have that in writing? Is that a legally binding commitment they've made to you? Does, you know, your client have a agreement that states that with them? You know, what are the penalties for breaking that agreement? Like, one thing, you know, to consider, right, is just because somebody has represented something to you verbally or even on their as marketing collateral, like until there's a agreement executed between the two whatever entities, it doesn't mean anything at all.
Yep. Thanks, Stuart. Martin asks, some Windows 80 attacks require changing of creds. If we change this, would this be classified as interrupting service? How do you recommend us navigating this? So I'm going to defer to the team on this, but my default go-to here is open a ticket. Roll.
I agree. Open a ticket. If you have to make changes to any client network, reach out to the client and say, hey, we're about to do this, or we would like to do this. Don't say you were about to. We'd like to do XYZ attack. It may change or it will change XYZ configuration. Are you okay with it? And we will respond accordingly. Sometimes we'll say yes, sometimes we'll say no. It depends, right? If we know it's going to cause a significant amount of issue where it's going to affect you as a competitor during the competition, we'll let you know. No, you can't do this. This will negatively affect the production environment, right? You have to also understand, like, you have to be able to compete, right? And the way to compete is by assessing the infrastructure. And if you break it and we have to fix it, that takes time away from you all and your team, right? It doesn't affect any of the other competitors. You have your own environment that your team's working from. So if we have to rebuild your infrastructure, you will have to just wait until we do. So definitely the go-to answer is ask the client if it's okay, and we will get you a response.
And that's been the go-to recommendation for many years, and yet every single year we see, you know, critical account lockouts or, you know, credential issues. So it'd be awesome if this was the first year we didn't see any of those, but it's worth thinking about, given that as a, you know, a tester, you're always going to be trying to maximize your findings and kind of dancing on that line. You know, what is your communication strategy, both to make sure you cover yourself ahead of time, like Raul was suggesting, and then when and if you make a mistake and overstep, how do you handle that when the client comes to you and might be upset that you've caused a production environment issue? Maybe they're having a separate production environment issue and they think that you're the source of it. How do you deal with that? Like, that's something to think through, because it's highly likely you're going to encounter that situation. And we've seen teams really distinguish themselves in how they finish the competition with how they've handled that situation. And what we would love to see as the volunteer team, and particularly those of us who are focused on scoring, is we would love to see only the technical findings dimension of the report be what separates teams. We'd like everybody to be so on top of their customer service and so proactive about their thinking about how they conduct the engagement that the only thing that matters is what their findings are. But every year we see teams separate themselves, sometimes really painfully and tragically, based on how they handle either what they're communicating with their client about proactively, and more often how they handle communicating with their client when they've made a mistake or the client thinks that they've made a mistake. So just do yourself a favor and game plan those scenarios.
Hey, Craig, do you want to talk about EOS?
Absolutely. So one dimension of how things are handled on the scoring side is when you committed an infraction or cause an issue for the client and the client discovers it. In the context of the competition, we will, as the client, come to you and engage you, and you have an opportunity with how you handle that interaction to earn back a huge number of the points that you would lose for having locked out an account or whatever the infraction is. If you handle the professional dimension and the professional role play component of this competition well, even when you make mistakes, they can be minimally impactful to your outcome if you sail through on the customer service angle. On the other hand, if you go to war with your client, insist that you're right, handle aspects of the interactions in ways that are insulting to the client representatives that are in the room with you, you can really cause huge problems for yourself. And that's, we are rooting for you on all aspects of the competition, but particularly on the professionalism side. That's why we love this competition. So if you pay attention to that, even when you make mistakes, they can have a much less significant impact than if you fumble that part of it. Stu or anybody else, if you have anything to add there on EOs, which stands for educational opportunities, yeah, please offer your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to emphasize something that Greg said. Like, you have the opportunity to earn back an overwhelming majority of your points on a EO. So, I account lockouts is maybe not the best example because typically, like, you get your score adjusted relative to the severity and impact of your adverse impact. However, so like something like bringing down your entire client's DC environment, right? That's probably a pretty big one. You still could earn back like a huge amount of the percentage of points relative to the penalty doesn't ever change, right? Like, you can always earn back like basically virtually all the points on it. So, just because your client, like, and that's based on the real world, right? Like, I have retained pen test companies, right, based off of how they handled adverse things. It's another opportunity for you to demonstrate to your client the value that you can provide to them, right? Like, oh fuck, oh darn, we fucked up, or whatever. We screwed up, and the pen testers coming to me and saying, hey, we screwed up. Here's what we're gonna do to ensure that that it won't happen again. Like, here's the white glove treatment that we're gonna give you, et cetera, et cetera. That really goes a long ways, right? Like, sometimes a little bit of adverse experience between you and the client can do wonders to improve your relationship. So think of educational opportunities as just that, an opportunity.
Yeah, every single one of us is screwed up in some way, and we've worked through that. One other thing I do want to mention is we want to practice opening tickets, or suggest practicing opening tickets for you, because a lot of times we'll get tickets that say this isn't working, but it's lacking any details, where you tried to log in, what username, all those sorts of things. So treat a ticket like a technical report of an issue, and the more information we have, the better we're going to be able to help you quicker.
I just have one thing to add to that, Tom, on the topic of handling opening tickets. For teams that have been in the competition for multiple years, you may have seen some feedback to this effect before. I know it's something that I offer prominently when I'm scoring things, but a huge aspect of interacting with your client is trying to put yourself in the client's shoes and think about what the situation looks like from their perspective. And tickets are an easy way where that, where those issues manifest. So the ticketing system that you're using in the context of this competition, you're imagining yourself as the client in a real world environment. That ticketing system is likely not exclusive to your pen test or your team. So when you just fire off tickets that are like deep in the weeds on whatever thing that's top of mind for you as the pen tester, in the real world, if that ticket comes in, the person who sees your ticket will not likely have all the context there And it is, when we're evaluating how well teams are handling the professional dimension of the competition, that's a sign that someone hasn't really thought through things. So it's to your advantage to come up with some boilerplate language, 1 or 2 sentences that you open each ticket with, where you just say, "Hi, we're team so and so working on the pen test engagement. This is the issue that we've encountered." Like, it may seem like a really small thing, but when you're actually doing the role playing, when tickets come in and people are just talking like mid thought process about the thing for their engagement, you're not thinking about what it looks like from the client's perspective. So just think about that. Introduce yourself at the top of each ticket. Don't assume anyone knows who you are or what you've been working on. It might be a different person than you interacted with last time. Just food for thought there.
Okay, next one for Josh.
All right. Yes. For the central region materials I've seen previously, GitHub staging repo was the 3rd of October. Deadline is making changes the 10th. Those are the accurate dates. I was looking at the wrong week earlier when I was calling out dates. So that one is on me. The accurate dates are the 3rd of October for the request, which is already passed, and the 10th, which is this coming Friday, for any changes to be made to your repo.
Thank you. Next one, should we assume every client employee is fully aware of a role of pen testers? So anyone who walks into your room, they know that the pen test is going on. People who email you are aware of there being a pen test and you're asking for help. So basically anyone who's interacting with you knows your job, unless they say otherwise. But they're going to introduce themselves, so use that context to make the right decision.
They might know like what a pen test is at a super, super high level, right? But yeah, just I would ensure that you are responding in a manner appropriate for the roles of the employees that engage with you.
I think to put it more simply is just know your audience, right? You might get someone from HR for whatever reason that walks in. They have no idea what you're talking about. All they know is that you brought down their system and they're coming to talk to you with, this security person, right? So being able to talk to both people and be able to elaborate on the technical side for the, the technical person and being able to make that simpler for those that maybe not be as technical is super important. So just know your audience.
Awesome. Next, Omar.
Yep. Question from Omar: can I use my Notion notes without uploading anything, or accessing Notion will trigger the client, so I need to make a local copy of my notes? Raul?
This sounds like a personal tool. I would say no, don't use Notion. One, because I feel like that's probably something that it belongs to you, right? So you're going to be logging into this. We're going to see those credentials. So I strongly recommend we use OneNote.
And if it's notes you want to bring into the environment, either GitHub or print them out and bring them in physically.
Or write them down.
Okay.
All right. Daria asks, will the MS licensing that comes with the CPTC accounts allow usage of desktop apps, i.e. opening OneDrive documents in desktop app?
Roll.
Unfortunately, our licensing does not allow you to use the desktop app. Now, if you have let's say you're doing your reporting, right? And your school, for example, gives you M365 that you have enabled on your laptop, right? That you're performing the reporting on. That's okay. You can do that. Again, we'll see that. So just keep that in mind. But you will have that capability. So if you already have your own personally licensed Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, and you want to access that after the competition, that's fine. Just know that we're going to see it.
Perfect. We have Alex's question. Are we allowed to run a local Ghostwriter instance on our own devices after the environment access ends? I think we already said Ghostwriter was allowed as a local instance. Yeah. So that one is allowed as long as you're doing it locally, not uploading data to the cloud. I think the scenario maybe in the slide was creating the file locally, then exporting that to OneDrive and then using it locally. That should all be fine. So I don't see any issue with that tool. Just don't store the customer information elsewhere. And then that takes us to Jana's question, the last one. Not sure if I can ask this, but will there be a limit on the number of pages for the report? I don't know.
Ask the client.
I think any decision like that will be communicated broadly, though, as well, right? I think that's a great question to ask the client in a ticket. But if there is as was the case previously, if there is a page limit on reports, all teams will be advised of that.
I would assume that you should, from a sanity perspective of us grading things, you should assume there would be some sort of limit. I don't know what that limit is yet, though. But from a practical perspective, us trying to grade 20 or 30 reports in 4 to 5 hours, it's very difficult to read several 100-page reports. So just keep that in mind. And that takes us to the end of things. So we appreciate you all for sticking around for way longer than a half-hour webinar was scheduled for, but we wanted to make sure we get through everyone's questions. So thank you all. And we are looking forward to seeing you all at the regional events shortly. Some of you as soon as next week and over the next month or so. And then we're also looking forward to seeing some of you that make it to finals in Rochester. So thanks, everyone. You all have a good evening and good night, good morning, good day.